Okay, you know what's going on this week, right? Yeah, it's time for the midterm exam. Okay, so let's go to modules and let's go down here to the lecture notes and pull up the text file. So this text file is a list of topics. It's not the questions, it's just the topic list. So I'm going to click on that and bring this thing up. First thing we need to do is talk about the rules. Okay, so it's first half of the course, so first 7 chapters. Obviously it's going to be done at home, so open internet, open book, open everything. But I'll caution you, there's if you do the math, there's only like 2 minutes and 47 seconds that you can spend on each one of these things. So you really don't have the time to go look them up. Just say. All right, so there's 40 questions in a pool, but you're not going to get 40. You're going to get 25 questions. And the way that work, it's like a lottery. I don't have any idea which questions you're going to get, what order you're going to get them in. I mean, you could have a question from chapter 5 followed by a question from chapter 1, right? It's all jumbled up. There's going to be 2 extra credit questions that everyone gets. The chapter and page numbers are there to help you study, but they really won't be all that helpful during the quiz because, quite frankly, you're not going to have the time to flip to, page 129 and talk about the range problem, right? You're not going to have that kind of time, so instead you're going to have to study. That's just the way it works. Somewhere around the vicinity of 20% of the material is from the lecture and it's not in the book. So it would make sense, of course, is to look at this list, go through the lecture notes and kind of highlight the things that you know are going to be on the exam, right? Okay. The thing is time. You're going to have 1 hour and 15 minutes. Okie dokie. So let's go through. So one more time. These are obviously not the question. This is just a list of topics. Cool. So the first one is, what is secondary storage? It may be like a multiple answer, multiple choice kind of a thing. Like, which of the following are true of, secondary storage? So remember, primary storage is memory and secondary storage is just storage devices. Remember all that? Good. The next one talks about Java versus JavaScript. And quite frankly, they're not really related at all. So, yeah, you kind of need to know. That's kind of an important thing to know if you're taking a class in Java because people get very confused rather rapidly. So the next one is about, the Java language as a whole. So, like, which of the following are some of the rules and best practices for Java? Is it case sensitive? And what do you put at the end of a line? And that kind of stuff? I don't think it'll be complicated. It should be obvious by now. The test is made up of explain why, what are the rules, and can you interpret or write a line of code? Okay, those are the 3 ways the course is built. So the rule ones are actually kind of simple because typically those are written down. Typically. Okay, escape sequences. This is probably going to be one of those, can you interpret? It's going to have something out there and it's going to have some slashes in it, but you need to figure out, which one are going to generate, multiple lines on the screen. Variable names. Which of the following are rules? You're going to have an awful lot of those. What are the rules for variable names? Remember we talked about, camel case and Pascal case and, all the variables have a scope and they have a name and they have a data, all that stuff? Okay, good. Operator of precedence. You remember in my world, 10 million years ago, back when I was in grade school, it was, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. That's the way I remembered it. Anyway, operator precedence. So it's going to be a math thing where there's going to be some multiplication, some division, and some addition and subtraction without any parentheses. And you need to figure out what the heck the answer is. Comments. What are the rules for doing comments? Who are the comments for? Who is the target audience for comments inside your application? Is it the user of the program? No, they don't get to see the comments, right? So what are the rules? Okay. Comparing characters. Now, comparing characters is kind of strange. Behind the scenes, these things are converted to numbers, and so you're actually just comparing two numbers. But the problem is a capital A a smaller number than a lowercase a, or is it the other way around? I mean, you kind of have to know a little bit about how the numbering system works, which is kind of weird. So comparing characters is problematic. The range problem. Yay! Okay, so I mentioned the range problem a gazillion times. You just did a homework assignment where there was a range problem. And it doesn't really matter if you start at the top and go to the bottom, or start at the bottom and go to the top. As long as you're consistent, you can't jump around. So if I'm doing like letter grades, I can start with 90, 80, 70. That works. Or I can start with 60, 70, 80, go the other direction. But I can't go 80, 40, 60, 90. I mean, they have to be in order, but it doesn't matter what order. That doesn't make any sense. They have to be in sequence. Just doesn't matter what sequence it is. Logical opposites. Oh, for goodness sake. This will be what? I don't know, the third, fourth time you've seen something like this again? Let me ask you one more time, and I'm being a little dramatic in the exasperation in my voice here, but just bear with me. For God's sake, man, how many operators need to be converted? If there is 2 comparison operators and 1 logical operator for a total of 3 operators, how many operators need to be converted? Wow. This would be an easy one. Everyone should get this one, okay? Everyone should get this one. Comparing strings. Now, comparing strings is weird because they're not real variables. They're objects, remember? Okay? So unlike a primitive type like an integer where you can just use the equality operator, strings are not like that. They're class objects, and so you can't use the equal signs as a comparison operator, right? You remember all that? Good, okay. The switch statement. What are the rules for a switch statement? Yeah, there's lots of rules. We talked about how you have to have a break, and what can be in the. I'm not sure what you call it. I'm gonna call it the switch header. Can it be a double in there? Can I use variables in the cases? Do I have to have breaks? What about curly braces? What about scope? Lots of things in there you can look at. Formatted output. Yeah, remember format specifiers, and I only ask you to remember 3 of them, okay? The D one for just normal numbers, the F one for doing floating point numbers, and the S one for doing strings. That's it. I'm only asking you to do 3 of them. I'm not asking you to get into all the umpteen gazillion options that exist. But yeah, you should be able to convert a line of code using format specifiers. Yeah, you should be able to do that. Prefix versus postfix. So if I said students plus plus or plus plus students, that would be different. One of them, particularly when they're being used to evaluate, like it's on, let's just say, for example, it's on the right-hand side of the assignment operator, okay? One of them gives you the current value and then increments. The other one increments first and then gives you the value, okay? So, yes, they behave differently. You need to kind of remember how that works. Okay, in a sentinel-controlled loop, this is one of those things where I really don't know how many times this thing's going to run. But, so the sentinel itself, is there some rules on what the sentinel can be? I mean, for example, does it have to be a number like we did in our assignment? Or could it be a string or, a double or practically anything, right? Okay, good question. The next one talks about error messages. Okay, so error messages are designed for the user of this thing, not necessarily for programmers. So we talked about, there's several rules. They talk about, explain what went wrong. Explain how to fix it and what to do next. And then there's actually another one which we won't get to until we get to the graphical user interface, where your error message is going to have to tell you where the thing occurred. We don't have to deal with that just yet. But so there's several rules for error messages. So, which of the following are the rules for error messages? Now, for example, in an error message, can I use acronyms and computer jargon? Is that okay? Can I say the string could not convert to an integer because grandma knows what a string is and what an integer is? Okay. Loop types. Yeah, this is about which type of loop would you pick if. So it's going to be scenario based. One of them is going to be, the loop control variable is a number, and I know exactly how many we're going to do. Or if I know it's going to happen at least once, but I don't know how many times. Or I don't care if it happens first, but I don't know how many times. Those kind of scenarios. It's going to be scenario based, where you're going to match up, a scenario to a particular loop type. And I think you guys have got that one. It's not too complicated. You've done a couple of these, so I think you can be in good shape. Print writer. So I'm going to have you, write a line of code or two. I mean, we're only talking like 1 or 2 lines of code here, where I'm going to ask you to create a print writer and, print something to a file. Do you remember the rules? What was the step in writing to a file that is the most important thing that you don't forget? Yeah, okay. Detecting the end of file. So if you're reading from a file, you need to know when you've reached the end. Otherwise, you have to read the one line at a time. When you get to the end, you need to know when to stop. And in Java, this is done in a rather unusual way. So, yep, you need to know, how do you detect the end of file? Random numbers. So there's something that's a little odd about the random number generator doodad, in that if you can remember what the odd thing is and what you have to do to overcome that oddness, that'd be a really good thing. It'll probably be a fill in the blank kind of a question. Generate me random numbers between 4 and 84, something like that. So you need to know how to do that kind of things. A method header. So when you're creating a method, there's some rules. Which of the following are the rules for a method header? We talked about, what type of, is it camel case for a method, or is it, Pascal case, and if there's arguments, and if there's more than one argument, and all those kinds of things. What goes on that first top line when you're creating a method? What about return types, and what about, if it's public or private, and all the rest of those things, okay? The next one is going to be passing arguments, and this is kind of sort of simple. These two are very much related. So what are the rules for creating the header, and then what are the rules for passing arguments to a method? So which are the rules for passing arguments? They have to be in the same scope, they have to be in the same order, and have to have comparable data types, and all the rest of that stuff, right? Okay, good. And then this concept of pass by value. I mentioned to you before that basically what the machine does is before it passes a value to the method, it makes a Xerox copy and then passes the Xerox. That way you can scribble on it. The method can do anything it wants to that thing and it won't ever affect the original, right? Okay, that's kind of what pass by value is. The next one is returning a value. I'm going to ask you to write me a very simple method, maybe something that adds 2 numbers together or something simple like that. It won't take you very long to do. And it returns a value. So I need to know that you know how to have a return value and actually do some math or whatever it is that the thing is, and then actually return something. Okay. So chapter 6, of course, is a philosophical chapter. It's an awful lot of philosophy in here. So I'm asking you, what's the difference between a class and an object? And this may be like a narrative kind of a thing, and you don't necessarily have to have a technical answer. It could be a non-technical answer. Describe the difference between, the cookie and the cookie cutter, or the recipe, or something like that, right? Okay, we're coming up on the 15-minute mark. You guys know how this works.